So hello and welcome to Explore Norway, and today I'm going to explain you what mistakes tourists do when visiting Oslo. I've been living here since 2008, so I should have a pretty good understanding of the city. And yes, I'm going to see how you can outsmart and avoid these problems, like the distances, the prices, and you will also learn about the turf war of the buses. Many tourists think Oslo is easily walkable because everything looks compact, but that's because the map doesn't show everything.
Oslo's city center is very walkable. You can stroll from the Opera House to the castle in about 30 minutes. But here's where tourists get it wrong. They look at a tourist map showing Oslo attractions and assume everything is close together. Vigeland Park, one of Oslo's most famous attractions, looks like it's just at the edge of the center. In reality, it's 3.2 kilometers. That's a 45 to 60-minute walk from the city center. The museums on Big Døy Peninsula? That's a 2-hour hike if you try to walk there, assuming you know all the shortcuts. You can hike to Holmenkollen, if you don't mind the 400 meters of ascent and the nearly 3 hours. Oslo is one of Europe's largest capitals by surface. To reach the northern border in the middle of the forest would take you an entire day of hiking, and it's recommended to bring a tent with.
In some cities, it's very common to take a taxi to get around the city center, but in Oslo, I wouldn't do that unless you have money to throw away.
As previously explained, the city center is easily walkable. Yet some tourists take taxis for these short distances because they are used to it. Due to one-way street and an interdiction to cross the center for cars, it can end up that your short ride becomes very long. Combine it with the fact that Oslo taxis are among the most expensive in Europe. Even these short rides cost 150 to 300 kroner, 14 to 27 euros. The solution? Use your phone's map to check walking distances before hopping in a taxi, or take public transport. Here, we have to mention that taxis are the only service where you might encounter tourist scams. This is usually when taking a taxi at the airport. But to avoid any problem, you should order your ride only at the yellow machine there.
The tourists have heard that there are very high prices here in Oslo. That's true, but the locals are not happy either, and here you can learn more about it.
Oslo is expensive everywhere, not just tourist areas. Here's what you need to know. A bottle of water at a convenience store, 35 to 40 kroner, 3 to 4 euros. A simple lunch, 150 to 200 kroner, 14 to 18 euros. A beer at a bar, 90 to 120 kroner, 8 to 11 euros. These aren't tourist trap prices. These are normal Oslo prices. Also, we have never experienced paying a different price when playing the tourists. All prices are listed outside a restaurant. And the smiley and frowny faces will tell you the last result of the food safety inspection. The mistake tourists make is comparing prices between stores looking for local bargains. Yes, there are price differences, but unlike Prague, where tourist shops charge 4 times more than local ones, in Oslo the variation is maybe 10 to 20%. The cheap option is still expensive by international standards. Most restaurants have their menu online, so you can check how much it will cost in advance. Secret tip: if you are really strapped for cash, visit the IKEA restaurant in Sleppenden or Furuset. There is even a free bus.
So here I am at the hop on or off terminus at the Karl Johan in front of between the university and the National Theatre. And you think, oh, there are 4 buses standing there, but actually there are 2 times 2 because there are 2 companies which have a bit of turf war.
These 2 completely different companies operating identical-looking red hop-on hop-off buses in Oslo, Strømme and Hop-on AS. They look the same, follow similar routes, charge similar prices, but they're bitter rivals engaged in a nationwide corporate war. This rivalry includes multiple court cases worth millions of kroner, accusations of sabotage and embezzlement, and even physical altercations between staff in Haugesund. To avoid more conflicts, their selling booths are now separated by 100 meters. But at price tag of around 490 Norwegian kroner, without any discount, it's not directly cheap. The solution? Skip both companies entirely, and use Oslo's excellent public transport instead. A tram ride on Line 12 passes many of the same attractions, costs a fraction of the price, and runs more frequently. Or invest in an Oslo Pass. For a little bit more, the entry to the museums and public transport in the whole city is included, as well as other deals. By the way, the official and easiest way to buy the Oslo Pass is directly from visitoslo.com or the official Oslo Pass app. You get an instant digital pass. While there are some authorized resellers like tickets.com that you are only buying a voucher, and you will need to collect your pass at the visitor center at the central station. You can't use it directly. This has caught many tourists off guard who thought they were buying a digital pass.
So, Oslo has a good public transport system and you should not be afraid to use it.
If you're avoiding Oslo's public transport because you're used to sketchy systems elsewhere, don't. Oslo is completely different. The metro, trams, and buses are clean, mostly punctual, safe, and incredibly easy to use. Even the term T-bane just means tunnel train. It's the metro. The entire system uses one ticket through the Ruter app. You can hop from metro to tram to bus seamlessly. A single ticket for Zone 1 is valid for 60 minutes, and you can transfer between any transport within that time. If you plan to visit museums, then consider buying an Oslo Pass. The public transport system is mostly reliable, but the trains have in the past years experienced a lot of problems. Also try to avoid taking the metro and trains during the rush hour between 15:30 and 17:30 on weekdays.
So maybe you want to play it safe and go to your usual chain restaurant, but in Oslo you have a lot of even small restaurants, but also like Nordic only chains, which you maybe should try out. And the best things is a bit outside of the like touristy place.
Oslo has an excellent food scene, but some tourists stick to international chains thinking they're cheaper. They're not. You'll pay similar prices anyway. The mistake is thinking chains are significantly cheaper or safer choices. A Big Mac meal costs almost the same as a proper lunch at a local cafe, around 150 to 180 kroner, while most tourists will eat at Karl Johans gate or Aker Brygge. Head to Greenland behind the train station for excellent ethnic cuisines at reasonable Oslo prices. Try Metallen Food Hall for local Norwegian specialities. Explore Grünerløkka for trendy local restaurants and cafes. These aren't tourist traps. All restaurants are frequented by locals, especially outside the main tourist season.
So, and one of the biggest misconceptions tourists have about Oslo is when they see picture of the fjords and think, oh, let's go there for one day. That's not going to work, and here is why.
Here's the reality. The famous Western Norwegian fjords, Geiranger Fjord, Norway Fjord, Sognefjord, Hardanger Fjord, are not near Oslo. They're 6 to 12 hours away by car or train. You cannot do them as a day trip from Oslo. The Norway in a Nutshell tour that tourists book is a full-day journey with minimal time actually in the fjords. Mostly, you're just traveling. To properly experience the Western fjords, you need at least 2 to 3 days, preferably staying overnight in places like Flåm, Geiranger, or along Sognefjord. If you only have a day or two in Oslo, explore Oslo properly, and maybe visit the nearby Oslo Fjord. If you want to see the famous fjords, plan a separate trip, or add several days to your Norway itinerary. Don't waste your Oslo time on exhausting tours, where you spend 10 hours traveling to see fjords for 1 hour. Save the fjords for when you have proper time to enjoy them.
So that's for today, and we hope now you can avoid doing the 7 mistakes tourists do in Oslo. And if you want to know more about the cities and watch our extensive Insider's Guide, or if you want to go out of the city, and we have a video with 20 day trips from Oslo.